The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. MMDA Chairman Benhur Abalos has resigned from his post. That's in order for him to serve as the campaign manager of presidential aspirant Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Abalos revealed that President Duterte has accepted his resignation and assured the public that the MMDA remains in the good hands of general managers. Abalos also said that he's good friends with Marcos Jr. and has previously served as the former lawmaker's campaign manager back in 2016. Presidential aspirant Ping Lacson says he wants to prevent disinformation on social media. In his Rated Corina interview, the presidential aspirant said solving this will be like solving ordinary crimes. According to Lacson, the National Privacy Commission can help authorities uncover the identities of these fake news mongers, and he added that he's confident of the authorities' capabilities to catch all those who spread disinformation.
Kung ano yung capability ng mga culprits, yung mga ginagamit yung social media platforms para makapanira, mag-spread ng fake news, ganun din ang capability ng dapat ng law enforcement. Para rin yung pag-solve ng ordinary na krimen, magsisimula ka sa mababa until you reach the mastermind.
Senator and presidential aspirant Manny Pacquiao says he is qualified to become president of the Philippines. Speaking to journalist Corina Sanchez, Pacquiao said that the country needs a leader that actually cares for its people, and that while a candidate's educational background is important, what matters most is their values. And he also promised to manage the Philippines in the same way that he lifted his family out of poverty.
Yan po nga po problema natin kasi wala tayong naging mabuting leader sa ating bansa, kaya tayo nagbaon-baon sa utang, nagkandahirap. Kailangan din yung educational background, basta may puso ka, importante yan.
EDSA bus carousel drivers and conductors held a protest rally outside the LTFRB office in Quezon City this morning over the supposed unreleased salaries. The group is appealing for the immediate release of their salaries, allegedly amounting to around 20 million pesos. Presidential aspirant Leode de Guzman and his running mate Walden Bello joined this demonstration. The LTFRB has yet to release a statement on the matter. Authorities say that the COVID-19 pandemic has produced a lot of medical waste. But how exactly can this impact humans' health? And what can we do to reduce it? A health expert from the World Health Organization explains in this video.
Medical waste is all the waste that results from vaccinations, from testing for COVID-19, as well as for caring for patients in healthcare facilities and homes. So this is vaccine needles, vials, testing reagents, testing swabs, as well as all the personal protective equipment that health workers are using, such as masks and aprons, as well as carers and the patients themselves. In terms of the scale, it's massive. We've all seen discarded masks on the streets, and in 2020 alone, 4.5 trillion additional disposable masks were thrown away by the public, resulting in 6 million extra tons of waste. In our own analysis, looking at the extra waste loads at healthcare facilities, we found that it increased by 3 to 4 times during this pandemic. And in facilities that didn't segregate their healthcare waste, the increase was 10 times greater, which really shows that segregation is very important because only 20% of healthcare waste is infectious and hazardous and requires extra care and treatment. At the same time, we know that 1 in 3 healthcare facilities globally before the pandemic lacked ways to safely segregate and treat waste. There's many adverse impacts from unsafely managed and treated healthcare waste. So needle stick injuries cause many hepatitis B and C infections every year. There's also other infectious pathogens that are spread through bandages and other infectious waste, some of which are not treatable through existing antimicrobials. There's also all the dangers that are involved with burning waste, and in particular, plastic can lead to the release of dioxins and furans, which are carcinogenic and can really harm not only those working in healthcare facilities, but those vulnerable communities that surround where healthcare waste is being burned. 3 main things the public can do. The first is to become aware and take it as your personal responsibility to understand the amount of waste you're generating and how you can reduce those volumes to begin with. So for example, gloves are not needed in many situations, so reducing things that aren't needed can reduce volumes of waste. The second is to be a conscious consumer and actively seek high-quality reusable PPE. And in particular, in high-income countries, increasingly we're finding that very high-quality reusable masks are available, and those would be preferred. In places where high-quality reusable masks aren't available and disposables are the only option, it's also important to think about recycling these masks. And increasingly we're finding that recycled masks are being put to use to make roads and other building materials. Lastly, the packaging. It's really important to try to seek products that use more ecological packaging and paper-based packaging instead of plastics. And I also just want to emphasize that the government also has an important role by creating and implementing strong healthcare waste policies that are backed by regular budgets and financing, in supporting the recycling sector so all that waste that isn't infectious can be put to other uses, and lastly, in investing in high quality, locally manufactured PPE, which not only can reduce carbon emissions from transporting goods long distances, but it can also help fulfill commitments that were recently made around low carbon and sustainable health systems. So in short, we can no longer afford to ignore the impact on the environment. The good news is it's possible to prevent and protect against COVID-19 and the environment, and I call on each of you to do your part.
As the country's debt increased due to the pandemic, what will be the government's outlook for the country's economy in 2022? Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez discusses this on Bloomberg Markets Asia.
I think that's not likely.
Is the Philippine government intending to, I guess, raise more funds overseas? Are there plans for that in 2022?
Yes, we are. But our borrowings, our plan for borrowings for next year are basically, we're going to depend on our domestic market. And the Philippines maintains its strong international presence by issuing global bonds in multiple hard currency markets, such as US, Japan, and China. However, as I said, it's going to be around 75-25 in favor of the domestic debt market.
So we're looking at Panda, Samurai, Euro, Dollar, bond sale. Can you be a bit more specific, Secretary Dominguez?
Well, in the immediate future, we are looking at issuing about $500 million in green bonds. But again, we are waiting to see the favorable market conditions for that.
Earlier you talked about the Philippine debt. How do you think the debt is sustainable?
Well, I believe so. You know, our total debt to GDP at the end of the year was at 60.5% of GDP. And that's, of course, much higher than what it was in 2019, which was 39.6%. However, if you net out our internal government debt to government agencies, it's only at 54% of GDP. So that we still have it's sustainable, and it is basically within our rating peers range.
When it comes to debt to GDP, when do you see that level going back to pre-pandemic level? What is realistic?
We think by the end of 2022, 2023, we will start seeing a moderation of our debt to GDP ratio, because we expect a fairly high GDP growth rate, and that our tax collections are going to be much higher. In fact, this year, in 2021, our tax collections were already 9% over those of 2020. And by the end of this year, we will be at the levels, at pre-pandemic levels.
So higher tax collection, does it then mean that you won't need to plug revenue leaks? Are there plans for that?
Well, at the moment, as you know, we only have about 5 months left in this administration, and we are certainly working to get a fiscal consolidation plan ready. And my goal is that by the time we hand over to the next administration, we will hand over to them
VIPs, dust off your bang bongs, because after a 4-year hiatus, Big Bang is finally making a comeback. YG Entertainment announced that the group behind hit K-pop tracks Loser, Fantastic Baby, and Bang 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 will come out with new music this year. But that wasn't the only big news that YG had to share about Big Bang, as they also announced that group member T.O.P. will be leaving the agency after 16 years. While T.O.P. will still participate in Big Bang's comeback and any future activities whenever possible, his exclusive contract with YG has ended. This means he will no longer be a talent under the label and can take on a wide variety of individual activities aside from his promotions with the group. Here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. The camp of Pastor Apollo Kibuloy is questioning the timing of the FBI's release of his wanted poster. They believe that the FBI did this to undermine President Duterte and to interfere with the upcoming elections. Bongbong Marcos admits that he's worried about the disqualification cases filed against him. And the Philippine women's national football team is back in the country after qualifying for the World Cup. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.